You lie back and picture a small, landlocked country that somehow sits among the richest on Earth, about 105k United States dollars GDP per person according to the IMF. Banks hum behind quiet facades, not noise but gravity. Money doesn't clink here, it settles. Deep in the supply chains of value, furnaces glow. Switzerland refines roughly 50–70% of the world's newly mined gold. An unshowy crossroads, where ore becomes bars and flows bend before rippling out again. Swiss banks remain the leading hub for cross-border wealth management, about 2.7 trillion United States dollars in 2023. Fewer than 9 million people, outnumbered by mountains and decisions. How did a confederation in the Alps become this quiet center of trust, gold, and treaties? If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive, and I'd love to hear from you too. Where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Now, settle deeper into your blankets, let your breath slow, and together we'll slip into the journey. To understand this calm power, you travel backward. The elevators, the treaties, the vaults, they fall away. Snow replaces neon. The year loosens. The air sharpens. The mountain groans before it wakes. Ice fractures like glass beneath your boots. You breathe once, and the air cuts back. 15,000 years ago, the world is half frozen and trembling. A glacier the size of a kingdom grinds down through stone, leaving behind crushed valleys and the taste of metal in the wind. The sun is pale, still learning how to warm the earth again. You stand where no name exists yet, only hunger and sound, the drip of meltwater, the slow thunder of shifting ice, the heartbeat of something immense and unseen. Your hands are cracked from cold. The fur on your shoulders is stiff with frost. Every step hums with risk. One wrong echo and the crust could give way, swallowing you whole. You listen to the silence the way a modern traveller might listen to a ticking clock, counting, waiting, promising the next breath. Somewhere to the east, a raven's call cuts through the wind. You follow it instinctively. Sound means life. You move downhill where the glacier has begun to bleed into streams. Between black boulders lies a patch of moss, bright as emerald. You kneel, tear it free, press it to your mouth, alive. Behind you, the ice shifts again, a sigh, almost human. You turn, and for a heartbeat, the mountain seems to breathe. Archaeologists will one day call this the retreat of the last ice age. They'll mark layers of pollen and ash, count shells in the clay, speak of epochs and melt rates. But none of that exists for you. You know only thaw, the smell of wet stone, the sudden softness underfoot, the drip that will one day become a river. You walk until your shadow lengthens. The air grows thicker, sweeter, meltwater runs past your ankles. You find a hollow under an overhang of rock, dry, almost warm, a place to survive the night. You kneel, strike flint, coax sparks into grass. The flame takes, small at first, then dancing gold. The sound startles you, the whisper of fire after months of silence. You cup your hands around it, guarding it from the breath of the mountain. Every flicker is a heartbeat, every crackle a memory of the world to come. Later ages will call this land Helvetia and draw lines upon it, cantons, borders, treaties, but tonight it's simply you and the dark. Your companions sleep nearby, a woman, 2 children, 3 goats. They dream in fits, curling closer to the warmth. You watch the flame until it steadies your pulse. A forgotten detail, when early hunters burned pine resin, it filled caves with a sharp sweetness that clung to skin for days. You smell it now, faint and dizzying. Outside, wind howls, the glacier answering in a low rumble, a conversation older than language. You wonder, not in words but in bone, if the world will ever stop shifting. Each sunrise brings new sounds, dripping, cracking, bird call, as though the planet itself is breathing faster, thawing into life. Records will never tell when humans first settled these valleys. Some say 12,000 years ago, others more. They'll find flint blades, a bead carved from bone, soot in layers of soil. But the truth is simpler. Someone once sat by a fire in a half-frozen cave and refused to die. You stir the embers. Sparks rise like insects. A child turns in sleep, murmuring. You tuck the fur tighter around them. Outside, the storm calms. The glacier creaks and settles, exhaling mist through the ravine. The first true night of spring. Later, you'll follow the herds into the lower valleys, where forests wait, elm, oak, birch, and where the earth yields roots and berries. You'll mark the seasons by the melting of snow and the return of birds, and somewhere along the way, language will find you. Sounds for fire, for hunger, for home. But for now, you listen. The ice is quiet, the air is warmer. The mountain at last is still. 1,000 centuries from this moment, people will look at these same peaks and build railways through them, carve clocks in their valleys, swear oaths of neutrality between nations. Yet none of that matters. As your eyelids grow heavy, you have made a fire. You have survived the longest winter. The last sound before sleep is the soft hiss of melting snow. It reminds you of breathing. And in that rhythm, slow, deep, endless Switzerland begins. Morning comes thin and blue. Mist curls over the water like smoke from another world. The ice has retreated far up the mountains, and in its absence the earth has begun to breathe again. The rivers no longer roar with melt. They murmur, winding through green valleys where birds circle above what used to be glaciers. You stand on a wooden platform above the lake, your home built on stilts that sink into the shallows. The lake reflects everything: clouds, peaks, the faint line of smoke from your neighbour's fire. Beneath the planks, water sighs and slaps against the poles. This is the world of pile dwellings, 5,000 years before the birth of any nation. Small clusters of homes suspended between earth and water. You wake to the smell of wet reeds and ash. A child laughs outside, throwing crumbs to ducks. In another hut, someone hammers flint. The rhythm carries across the lake like heartbeat. You pull a woven cloak over your shoulders, feeling its rough weight, linen and wool, spun by hand from crops planted on the nearby slopes. It is scratchy but warm, and every thread smells faintly of smoke and sun. Around you, the morning begins like a ritual. A woman grinds barley on a stone, the grains whispering into powder. Someone sharpens a bronze blade, and sparks dance briefly in the dim light. The smell of cooking fish mingles with the scent of resin from the torches. These people, your people, have learned to grow, to settle. You farm patches of land near the forest edge, hunt deer, keep goats and cows. You've made pottery with fingerprints still pressed into the clay, proof that hands once shaped permanence from mud. You live in rhythm with water and wind. But beneath that rhythm there is tension. The lake is calm, yet you've seen what it hides. Storms rise quickly here. Rain turns to wind, wind turns to fire. Last winter a hut burned. Lightning, maybe, or a fallen torch. The flames leapt from roof to roof faster than anyone could move. In minutes 20 homes were ash, their black skeletons reflected in the water. Tonight, the elders will talk about rebuilding higher on the hill, but others refuse. The lake gives fish, cools the air, guards against wolves. You stand between them, hearing both sides' fear and familiarity. It is the first quiet argument over land, a theme that will echo through the next 10,000 years. The mountains watch, indifferent. By midday, clouds gather again. You carry baskets of clay down to the shore, setting them near the fire pit. The flames lick at the wet shapes until steam rises like breath. Bronze jewelry glints on your wrist, copper traded from far away, perhaps from the south where the sun burns stronger. Traders cross the passes now, carrying tin from distant Britain, amber from the Baltic, shells from the Mediterranean. They tell stories of open seas, of cities where the sun never hides behind peaks. You listen knowing you will never see them, Your world is narrow but complete. A sudden wind cuts across the lake, scattering ash. The air smells of rain. You glance up. Dark clouds stack above the ridge. People rush to tie their roofs tighter, to pull the animals inside. The storm comes fast, the way all storms do in the Alps. Lightning cracks across the water, turning the surface white. You dive inside the hut, pull the child to you. The walls shake. Outside, the lake roars. Through the gap in the planks you see another flash. Not lightning this time, but fire. One of the torches has fallen. A roof catches. For a moment the rain and fire fight above the lake. Reflection against reflection. You grab the bucket, dash outside. Wind howls, water stings your face. Others join shadows in rain. You throw water again and again until the flames hiss out, leaving the scent of smoke and soaked wood. The storm rolls west. Silence falls heavy as fog. The next morning, everything smells of soot and wet earth. You walk through the settlement. Blackened beams, charred walls, but still the same rhythm. Someone is already rebuilding. You feel a quiet pride, a stubborn pulse. Destruction here is part of breathing. The mountains take. The people rebuild. Archaeologists will one day find these ashes perfectly preserved under silt and call them the lakeside settlements of the Neolithic and Bronze Ages. A UNESCO World Heritage long after your fire has gone cold. They will see how carefully you placed each pole, how you oriented the door towards sunrise. They'll find seeds of wheat, barley and flax, animal bones, fragments of woven baskets, and they'll see that every house burned at least once. Fire was not just accident, it was renewal. You kneel at the water's edge, rinsing your hands. The sky is soft again, pale blue above the peaks. The reflection shivers with each breath of wind. In the shallows, fish move like silver lines in ink. You think of your ancestors, hunters in the ice, and of the ones who will come, those who will melt copper with tin, hammer swords, march in ranks. They will name this land, divide it, defend it. But for now, your life is simpler. Gather, cook, rebuild, love. As night falls, torches bloom once more around the lake. Their orange halos drift across the water. The air hums with quiet talk, laughter, the clink of pottery. Children chase sparks. The fear from the storm fades into the warmth of routine. You lie back on the wooden floor, listening to the creak of the stilts. Beneath you, the water whispers, steady and close. You imagine the lake as a mirror, showing not your reflection but the shape of time itself, ripples moving outward, forever. Somewhere beyond the dark, a wolf howls. The sound doesn't frighten you anymore. It's part of the night, like the hiss of fire and the sigh of reeds. You close your eyes, breathing in the faint smoke that still clings to your hair. The world is smaller than it will ever be again. One lake, a few families, a thin line of smoke rising to the stars, and yet it feels endless. The flames outside flicker once, twice, then settle into coals. The valley sleeps, and so do you. The centuries pass in silence. The lake villages decay, sink into mud, and the forest swallows their remains. The valleys fill with voices again, new people, new songs, new fears. The air is warmer now, the soil is darker, and the rivers are strong. Herds move across the plains. You are born into one of the Celtic tribes that live between these mountains and rivers, long before anyone calls this place Switzerland. The elders say the world ends at the peaks. Beyond them, only gods or monsters dwell. But trade brings rumour. Traders from the south bring wine from Gaul, salt from the Mediterranean, and stories of a vast republic that builds straight roads across mountains and seas alike. They call it Rome. You are not yet afraid of it. Not yet. The tribe you belong to is Helvetii, tall, restless people of bronze and iron. You live in a hill fort overlooking a river, your wooden palisades lined with sharpened stakes. The houses are round, thatched, smelling of smoke and tanned hides. Bronze brooches hold your cloak, An iron sword, heirloom of your father, hangs at your hip. The weapon is heavy but familiar, balanced like thought. At dawn, you train with the others. The air tastes of metal and sweat. You slam the edge of your wooden shield against another, feeling the vibration travel through bone. You shout until your lungs ache, not from rage but from ritual. It is the voice that tells the valley you still belong here. Your people trade, fight, sing. You gather at feasts where bards tell stories of gods who sleep inside the hills and rivers. The druids carry knowledge no one writes down. Calendars carved into wood, rituals held in sacred groves, the belief that souls return in new bodies. You've seen sacrifices, a ram, a prisoner, their blood soaking into the earth as an offering to Tyrannus, god of thunder. And yet the storm that comes will not be a god sips. It begins with whispers. Traders say Roman legions are moving north, thousands of men in armor, their sandals beating in unison like rain. Their leader, Gaius Julius Caesar, wants to control all of Gaul, the Helvetii, caught between Germanic raiders to the north and the Romans to the south, make a desperate choice to leave. In the spring of 58 BCE, fires light the hills. You stand among them, watching smoke rise from your own home. 12 fortified towns, 400 villages, all set aflame so no one can turn back. You load what little remains onto carts, food for 3 moons, spears, children, elders, the oxen pull, the wheels groan, the whole tribe moves like a single animal, 500,000 souls in motion. The road west is endless. You cross rivers so wide the water freezes your blood. You hear crying at night, the sound of carts breaking on the stones. Behind you the land smoulders, ahead the unknown. It feels like migration, but it is exile. Then, one morning, scouts return. Pale, silent, the Romans block the road at the Rhone River, building a wall 19 kilometers long, higher than a man. You hear it before you see it, hammers on stone, orders barked in Latin. Caesar does not want you in his territory. The tribe turns north, through forests and marshes. The path leads to battle. You march in mud up to your knees. The Romans are disciplined, their camps geometric, their movements like clockwork. The Helvetii fight with fury, with songs, with chaos. You clash near a hill. The Romans call bivouacked. The sound of it is a storm, the ring of iron, the scream of animals, the crack of shields. You see the legions move as one body, their shields overlapping like scales. You throw your spear. It glances off a Roman helmet. You draw your sword, rush forward, and the line holds. You fall, rise, fall again. When the dust clears, the earth is red. Thousands of your people lie still. The Romans collect their dead, bury them in ordered rows. Yours are left for the crows. After 3 days, Caesar summons the survivors. His words, filtered through an interpreter, are cold. You may go home, but you will live under Rome. You walk back the way you came, back to the burned valleys, the blackened hills. You rebuild among the ashes. You learn new words, civitas, provincia, tributum. Your grandchildren grow up speaking Latin alongside the old tongue. Stone replaces wood. Roads appear, cutting through the forests like veins of order. Roman merchants bring olive oil, glass, wine, the idea that the gods can live in marble temples rather than groves. The city of Aventicum rises near your valley, capital of Helvetia, with baths, theatres and walls 10 meters high. You visit once, standing beneath arches so precise they make you dizzy. Fountains spill clean water into marble basins. The smell of incense replaces the smoke of sacrifice. You no longer carry your father's sword. The Romans have banned it, but you still feel its ghost weight against your thigh, like a missing limb. Years pass. You become a mason, building villas for Roman officials. You learn to mix lime and sand to carve patterns into stone. Your hands remember strength. Your children know peace. At night you still dream of drums, of that long road west, of the fire that ate your home, but the world has changed. You light a lamp of clay, oil flickering on the walls, and whisper a prayer not to Taranis but to Mercury, or perhaps to both. The gods overlap now, sharing names like borrowed cloaks. Somewhere north, beyond the Rhine, Alemannic tribes gather. You've heard rumours of raids, of burned outposts. The Roman patrols pass more often, their armour gleaming even under clouds. The empire feels unbreakable, eternal, but you've seen how quickly eternity burns. One day an old druid visits the town. He carries a staff wrapped in cloth and speaks softly. Empires fall like trees. The roots remain. You don't know what he means, but his words stay with you. Your hair greys. The roads you helped build still shine in the sun. Children play beside Roman fountains. Goats graze near temples. But the legions are thinner now. Their pay delayed. Their banners faded. The empire trembles. Then, in a single season, the silence breaks. Smoke again rising from the north. Alemanni warriors cross the border. The roads you built laid them straight to you. You watch from the hill as the first Roman villas burn. The stone cracks in the heat. The statues lose their faces. The city of Aventicum empties, its marble echoing with the steps of conquerors. You flee into the mountains. The same mountains your ancestors once crossed barefoot, where ice once ruled. You carry nothing but a bronze pendant and a loaf of bread. The forest closes around you like an old friend. Behind you, Rome dissolves into legend. Ahead, mist and pine. You climb until your breath turns to frost. The path bends upward, steep and cruel. At last you stop. Look back and see the valley glowing red in the distance. You don't feel fear this time, only the strange calm of return. Civilizations will come and go in that valley. The Alemanni will settle. The Franks will conquer. The church will rise, and someday a confederation will swear its oath on a meadow not far from here. But tonight, you are only a shadow between empires, listening to the wind threading through pine. You find shelter in a cave. The air is cold but dry. You start a fire, the same gesture your ancestors made thousands of years before. Sparks leap, and in their light you see the faint outline of painted walls, deer, spirals, human hands. You realize someone once lived here too. You add another branch to the flame. The mountain hums softly, the same low note that has always been there. You close your eyes. In the darkness, the whisper of history folds into breath, into silence, into sleep. Morning mist drifts through broken pillars. What was once Rome now lies scattered. Arches swallowed by moss, marble faces eroded into anonymity. The wind that moves through the ruins is cold but kind. It carries no orders, only echoes. You are born centuries after the empire's collapse. The year no longer matters. Time is measured by harvests and the shape of the moon. The land that was once Helvetia is now a patchwork of small kingdoms and fading tongues. In the west, Burgundians rule, already softened by Roman ways, Latin prayers on their lips, wine in their chalices. In the north and east, the Alemanni, Germanic and fierce, herd cattle among the ruins, speaking in a language that cracks like dry wood. Between them, valleys of silence, where Latin still clings to the stones like lichen. You grow up in one of those valleys hearing both tongues. At home your mother murmurs the old Latin prayers. In the fields your father curses in Alemannic. Your world is bilingual, and neither language feels truly yours. The Romans have gone, but their ghosts linger in roads and laws, in the rectangular stones that still outline forgotten towns. You walk these roads barefoot, tracing the grooves left by chariot wheels, wondering who will ever fill them again. The villages are small, their names shifting like mist. Aventicum Vindonissa, Augusta Aurica, now just whispers traded by shepherds. In the west, Burgundian lords build wooden halls where Latin scribes copy prayers by candlelight. In the east, Alemanni chieftains feast in smoky huts, drinking from horns. Their songs are loud and simple, their laughter sudden and fierce. Sometimes travellers cross the passes. Irish monks wrapped in coarse wool, carrying books heavier than their food. They speak of a faith that binds kingdoms, of a God who died and rose again. They move from valley to valley, founding monasteries in ruins. One of them, Gallus, settles near a river where the forest folds inward like a secret. He builds a small cell of stone, prays in Latin while wolves circle at night. The locals call him the foreign holy man, but his gentleness tames them. A monastery grows around his cell, and one day it will bear his name, Sinogel, future heart of learning in this cold land. You are young when you first see him. He blesses you with a hand that smells of smoke and ink. He cannot know that his quiet work will outlast empires. In these centuries, power drifts like fog. The Burgundian kingdom thrives for a time. Its nobles adorned with Roman rings, but far to the north another people rise. The Franks, led by kings who wear iron crowns and fight under the sign of the cross. When Clovis conquers Gaul, he brings both the sword and baptism. His sons inherit his appetite. By the 6th century their banners flutter at the foot of your mountains. When the Franks come, they come not as destroyers but as absorbers. They promise peace for loyalty, faith for freedom. You bend the knee not to a Caesar but to a king who claims divine right. Taxes return, scribes reappear, Latin reasserts itself in church and court. You learn to write your name or something like it. The letters are uneven, carved into wax tablets. The monks teach that writing preserves the soul. You believe them. You copy psalms by firelight, shaping the words slowly, as though each might crack if rushed. Outside, the wind howls over the passes. The centuries turn again. The Merovingians fade, replaced by stronger hands. The Carolingians, led by Charles the Great, who rules from Aachen and dreams of empire reborn. His men ride south through your valleys, counting households, measuring land. They build churches, impose tithes, demand order. You feel Rome stirring again, but its face has changed. One spring, a royal messenger arrives in your village. He reads aloud in Latin, new laws, new taxes, a new emperor blessed by the Pope. The villagers nod, though few understand. Afterward, the priest explains in Alemannic, softer, almost apologetic. You realize this is the rhythm of your land now. Every decree translated, every word doubled, every meaning split. And yet something grows beneath the layers of power. A sense of belonging not to emperor or king, but to valley and mountain. You begin to think of yourself not as Roman nor Frank, but as of here. At the monastery of St. Gall, life deepens into ritual. Bells divide the day into fragments. Matins, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. The sound carries through the forest like heartbeat. You join as a lay brother tending bees and grinding pigments for manuscripts. The scent of honey mingles with parchment and candle wax. The scriptorium glows gold in afternoon light. You learn to draw letters that look like prayers. The monks speak Latin during prayer, Alemannic in whispers, and the two languages weave together until you can no longer tell them apart. On cold nights, you dream in both. Sometimes travellers bring news, wars in Italy, Vikings on the northern seas, Saracens raiding the south. But here, in your valley, time folds in on itself. Snow comes early, melts late. The bells keep ringing. When Charlemagne dies, his empire fractures like thin ice. His grandsons divide it into pieces. Verdun, 843 CE, one kingdom east, one west, one in between. Your mountains fall between all three. You live at the border of languages, of loyalties, of maps no one agrees upon. The Franks to the east speak of order. The Burgundians to the west speak of honour. You and your neighbours speak mostly of weather. Raids begin again. Vikings on Lake Geneva, Magyars in the valleys, bandits in the passes. The monks hide their manuscripts under floorboards. You help carry a chest of books up the mountain one night, slipping on ice, heart pounding. The weight feels sacred. Words have become treasure. Out of this chaos, feudal lords rise like weeds. Each valley gains a count, each pass a toll. You owe allegiance to men whose faces you've never seen. They call themselves Graf, Duke, Lord, and each one swears loyalty to someone higher until the chain vanishes into heaven. The roads are no longer safe. You travel in groups carrying small crosses for protection. Still, you feel the pull of your land, the rhythm of cows' bells, the scent of pine, the curve of the river below your village. One evening, you climb the hill above your home. The light is amber, the air still. Below you, the fields glimmer like scales. You hear the bells from St. Gall drifting through the valley. In that sound, there is neither Rome nor Frank nor Burgundian, only continuity, the stubborn heartbeat of a land that refuses to disappear. In the distance, you can just make out the ruins of a Roman road, half buried under wildflowers. The stones remain straight even where the forest has claimed them. You trace one with your boot. It feels colder than the earth around it, like memory itself. That night, as you lie by the fire, you think of your people's many tongues, Latin, Alemannic, Burgundian, and how each has its own word for home. None of them are perfect, yet all mean the same thing, a place that endures. Generations from now, this mixture of speech will shape the cantons, German to the north, French to the west, Italian to the south, Romansh in the hidden valleys. But for you, it is simply the sound of neighbours calling across the field. A century later, the empire of the Franks fractures again. Lords feud, peasants hide, abbots mediate. The monks of St. Gall keep writing. They illuminate their pages with red ink and patience, recording not kings or battles but the cycle of days, the silence of mountains, the order of bells. In the margin of one such manuscript, a hand, perhaps yours, perhaps another, scribbles in Alemannic, "We are between worlds." You close the book, blow out the candle, and listen. Outside, snow begins to fall, soft, deliberate. The wind carries faint voices, Latin hymns, German prayers, the breathing of cattle, all blend into one long note that sounds like belonging. You fall asleep to that harmony, a music made of difference. The mountains keep watch, indifferent yet merciful. Somewhere in the dark, the first idea of unity stirs, still centuries away from its name. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive. The centuries turn, quietly. Empires flare and fade like distant lanterns. And still, your valleys remain. Green, secret, hemmed in by snow. The people have changed names. The lords have changed banners, but the soil feels the same beneath bare feet. The scent of pine, wet wool, smoke, and river never leaves. It is the late 13th century, and you live in the shadow of new masters. The House of Habsburg rises from its castle in Aargau, spreading its grasp like ivy across the German-speaking lands. Their messengers carry seals of red wax and voices of iron. They claim to serve the Holy Roman Emperor, but their ambitions are older and hungrier than any emperor's. You are a farmer in Uri, one of the forest cantons tucked between steep slopes and the long serpent of the Reuss River. Above you loom the passes, especially the St. Gotthard, a gateway through the Alps that traders now cross to reach Italy. The world's traffic hums above your fields, mules, merchants, monks. Yet for all that motion you feel pinned, watched, taxed, commanded by foreign stewards sent from Vienna. The air is thick with resentment. The taxmen take more grain each year. New tolls rise on the bridges. The Habsburg bailiffs, Vögte they're called, ride through the valleys with guards in mail, demanding obedience and bowing only to gold. Their faces are pale, their accents strange. You remember your father's voice. We are free men. We owe nothing but respect to God and the Emperor himself. But the emperor is far away, and the bailiffs act as if they are the empire. Rumours ripple between valleys. In Schweiz, peasants whisper that they will resist the next collection. In Unterwalden, a bailiff has seized a farmer's oxen for refusing to kneel. In taverns, men drink too fast, speak too loudly, and fall silent when strangers enter. Summer comes hot and slow. Grain grows tall, bending like waves. At dusk you walk the field's edge, watching the sun stain the mountains copper. Somewhere across the valley a horn sounds, a low, trembling note. It echoes 3 times, from slope to slope. You stop breathing for a moment. You know that call. It is the sign. That night, you climb a narrow trail through spruce and scree. The air smells of resin and river mist. Owls watch from the branches, their eyes round and still. When you reach the meadow above the lake, the stars are fierce, close enough to feel. Around the clearing, a handful of figures wait in cloaks. No torches, only the faint glow of a lantern wrapped in cloth. You recognize them by shape and voice. Walter from Uri, Conrad from Schwyz, Melchthal from Unterwalden. Ordinary men, farmers, herders, one minor clerk, but their presence feels like history gathering its breath. Someone speaks softly, enough of silence. A parchment is unrolled, smoothed against a rock. The words are few but deliberate. A pledge of mutual defence, of eternal brotherhood, of refusal to serve any lord who acts unjustly. Each canton promises to help the others in need, to settle disputes peacefully, to stand as equals under God. You listen as they read it aloud. The voice trembles, then steadies. The wind catches the last word and carries it into the pines. Then each man steps forward, places a hand upon the blade of a sword laid flat on the stone. The steel is cold against your palm. You repeat the oath. We shall stand together, for freedom and for justice, against all who threaten our peace. It is 1291. The year later generations will call the birth of the Swiss Confederation. But tonight it is just 3 valleys agreeing not to bow. The air thickens with silence. You feel the weight of the stars. The river murmurs below. No one cheers, no one speaks. You simply nod to one another, fold the parchment and slip away before dawn. For weeks afterward, you move through your days with the strange calm of secrecy. The world has not changed, and yet everything has. When the bailiff rides through the village, his chain glinting in the sun, you look him in the eye for the first time. The harvest passes quietly, then winter. Snow buries the trails, seals the passes. Beneath it, your oath burns steady, invisible as a heartbeat. But words alone do not stop empires. The next year, Rudolf of Habsburg, once emperor himself, dies and power fractures again. His son Albert inherits both throne and ambition. He sends new bailiffs, harder men, to enforce his claim. The valley stirs. The tension you have felt for years becomes a pulse in the air. Inns fill with soldiers. Bridges are guarded. Rumours fly of William Tell, an archer who defied the Austrian governor Gessler and shot an apple from his son's head rather than kneel. Whether he lived or not, his defiance spreads like wildfire through the mountains. Then comes 1315. In November, frost whitens the fields. You are older now, your hands calloused, your beard streaked with grey. You join a band of men gathering near Morgarten, where a narrow road twists between a mountain slope and the dark mirror of a lake. Scouts report that Duke Leopold of Austria, Albert's brother, marches toward you with knights and banners to crush the rebellion. The plan is madness. The enemy is armoured, trained, countless. You are farmers with halberds and clubs, but you know the land. You know where the road bends, where the rock hangs loose. You climb before dawn, carrying stones in your cloak. Fog clings to the trees, your breath plumes white. Below, the Austrians approach, shining ranks of iron, hooves striking sparks on the frozen path. The sound is a drumbeat of doom. Someone whispers, "Now, You push the first boulder. It rolls once, twice, then tears loose others. The slope collapses in a roar. Stones, trunks, earth. Horses scream. Men fall, arrows follow, then shouts. You rush down the hillside with your comrades, swinging halberds, thrusting spears. Steel meets flesh. The air fills with panic and thunder. For a few minutes that stretch into eternity, you feel nothing but motion, then silence. When it clears, the road is littered with armor, shattered lances, the smell of sweat and pine sap. The lake ripples crimson near the shore. The knights are gone. You are still standing. Morgarten is not just a victory, it is a miracle. That night, you sit by the fire with the survivors. No songs, no boasting, just the sound of wind across the peaks. You realize something heavy and luminous. The oath on the meadow was not words, it was prophecy. From now on, the mountains themselves seem to guard you. Months later, the three cantons meet again at Brunnen to renew their pact. This time, no one mentions allegiance to the empire. The parchment speaks only of freedom. Other towns will join: Lucerne in 1332, Zurich in 1351, Bern in 1353, until your small brotherhood becomes a federation, a network of valleys bound by choice rather than conquest. Still, the danger remains. The Habsburgs have not forgotten. Battles flare again. Sempach, Neffels, Laupen, men die, legends rise. A soldier named Arnold von Winkelried will one day throw himself onto a forest of spears to break the Austrian line. Whether true or myth, his name will echo wherever courage is needed. But for now you live in the afterglow of Morgarten. The mountains feel taller, the air cleaner. When you pass through the village, children look at you as if you carry fire inside your chest. You don't correct them. Maybe you do. Years later, grey and bent, you climb again to the meadow above the lake. The grass waves in the evening wind. You remember the night of the oath. The stars, the silence, the trembling hands. You whisper the words once more, though no one hears, together for freedom and for justice. The sun sinks behind the ridge. The first bell of vespers drifts up from the valley. The same notes your ancestors heard in Rome, in St. Gall, in every forgotten century. You smile. The world has always been heavy with empires, but it takes only a few hands joined in the dark to change its course. As night gathers, the stars appear again. Thousands of them, sharp and cold, like promises carved into the sky. And under their light, Switzerland begins to dream of itself. You wake to the clang of metal. The smell of oil and wool fills the morning air. Your village bell tolls once, twice, and again. It is not a call to prayer. It is the signal. The oath has held for decades now. Uri, Schweiz, Unterwalden, Lucerne, Zurich, Bern. The young confederation is a patchwork of dialects, banners, and tempers, but bound by one faith that no king, no duke, no foreign lord should rule men who can stand on their own soil with weapons in hand. It is 1386, a hot July morning near a town called Sempach. You are no longer young. Your son marches beside you, his first campaign. The night before, you couldn't sleep. The grass was damp, the stars hidden behind clouds. You heard the horses of the Austrian Duke Leopold snorting in the distance, restless, armoured like the men who ride them. Now the dawn has come, and with it the reckoning. Your men form ranks at the edge of the field. 3,000 farmers, millers, carpenters. You have no horses, no noble crests, no polished armour, only pikes, halberds, and courage. You can hear the Austrians across the plain, their voices rising over the ring of iron. They are knights, 4,000 strong, their helmets catching the sunlight like mirrors. A priest walks between your lines, lifting a wooden cross. His voice trembles. For God, for freedom, for your valleys. You feel the weight of your halberd. You look at your son and see his mouth move silently, repeating the words. When the horns sound, the world contracts to a heartbeat. The knights lower their lances, spurs flashing. The ground shudders. The line of horsemen glides forward like a tide of metal. You plant your feet in the mud, press the shaft of your weapon against your thigh, and wait. The first impact is unbearable. A wave of hooves, the clash of steel, the shriek of men crushed under armor. But your formation holds. The pikes bite. Horses rear, scream, collapse. The knights curse. Trapped in the narrow field, their lance is useless. The air fills with dust and prayer. You strike, withdraw, strike again. A blade scrapes your shoulder. Blood trickles down your arm, warm against the sweat. Beside you, your son stumbles, then steadies. The noise is endless. Screaming, hammering. The bell from Sempak tolling above it all. Then the line falters. The knights regroup, pressing forward with shields locked, spears thrusting like thorns. Your men are driven back step by step. Fear spreads like smoke. And then, out of the chaos, one man breaks from the crowd. A tall soldier from Unterwalden, Arnold von Winkelried, shouts something. No one catches the words. He drops his pike, spreads his arms, and runs straight into the wall of spears. You see him seize them to his chest, dragging them down as he falls, creating a gap in the Austrian line. The moment lasts no longer than a heartbeat. Then the shout goes up for Winkelried. You surge forward through the opening his body made. The formation bursts. The knights stumble, their ranks collapsing under the pressure. You push, swing, push again, until the field turns to churned earth and silence. When it ends, you are standing ankle-deep in mud. The air smells of iron and sweat, of trampled grass and rain that never fell. Your son kneels beside a wounded man, pressing cloth to his shoulder. The bell still rings in the distance, slow now, almost tender. Sempak is won. The Austrians retreat. Duke Leopold lies dead somewhere beneath his own banners. The Confederates gather what remains of the fallen, friend and enemy alike, and dig graves in the warm earth. No victory songs, no cheers, only exhaustion, gratitude, disbelief. That evening you sit on a stone, staring at the setting sun. The clouds are red, streaked with gold, as if the sky itself has been forged anew. You remember Morgarten, your father's stories of the first battle, and feel the pattern repeating generation after generation, learning the same truth. Mountains may shelter, but freedom must still be fought for. A few months later, you travel to Lucerne, carrying messages from your canton. The road winds along the lake, the peaks reflected like blades in the water. At the city gates, you see the wooden crest of the Confederation painted fresh, a white cross on red. It is simple, but it glows in the afternoon light like a heartbeat. In the market square, bells toll again, not warning this time, but mourning. Families gather around a wooden cross raised for Winkelried. Someone has carved beneath it. He made a path for freedom. You bow your head, whispering the prayer your mother taught you in another tongue. In the months that follow, peace feels strange. You return to your farm, rebuild fences, sharpen plowshares instead of blades. Your son marries and his children grow up hearing tales that already sound like myth. You never tell them about the smell of blood, the trembling ground, the sound of armor cracking. You only say, "The bell rang, and we stood together." But conflict never truly sleeps. Bern pushes westward, claiming valleys that once belonged to Burgundy. Zurich grows rich on trade and begins to eye its neighbours. Even within the Confederation, pride stirs. The cities envy the rural cantons' freedom. The peasants distrust the patricians' gold, yet when danger threatens, they still meet beneath the same banners, the same crosses, the same memory of the meadow and the oath. In 1415, a new rumour spreads. The Austrian duke has turned his attention elsewhere. The Swiss seize the moment. Bern leads a campaign across the River Aar, capturing new lands. The Confederates carve a broader map, their red flag fluttering over captured walls. Each victory feeds another. But not all battles are against foreign powers. In 1436, when a noble line dies without heir, the city of Zurich claims the inheritance. The other cantons protest. Words turn to anger, anger to arms. The old Zurich War tears the alliance for 14 bitter years. Neighbour fights neighbour, and even old comrades from Sempach meet again on opposite sides. You are too old to fight now, but you hear the bells of marching armies echo through your valley once more. You fear that the Confederation born under stars may die under pride. Yet somehow it endures. Zurich is defeated but forgiven. The bond mends, scarred yet stronger. By the time peace returns, you can barely walk. Your hands shake when you hold a cup, but on clear evenings you still climb to the chapel on the hill to hear the bells. They sound different now, broader, deeper, cast in new bronze melted from captured cannon. Each toll feels like a pulse through the valley, a reminder that even war leaves music behind. Sometimes in dreams you hear those bells blending with others. Bern's Cathedral, Zurich's Grossmünster, Lucerne's lakeside chapels, all ringing together, their notes carrying across the Alps. The sound seems to weave the valleys into one breath. You know this dream is not fantasy. It is memory of what the people have built, unknowingly, year by year. One winter morning, a monk passes through your village collecting alms for the poor. You offer him bread and ask where he's bound. He says he rides north, towards Zurich, to deliver news. The Emperor has confirmed the Confederation's independence in all but name. You smile. The world finally sees what the mountains have known for centuries, that freedom can live in small places. After he leaves, you step outside. Snow falls quietly, soft flakes drifting onto your sleeve. The field lies bare and peaceful. Somewhere far below, a bell rings again, faint but sure. You close your eyes. The sound echoes up the slope, pure as mountain air. Each chime carries a memory of Morgarten, of Sempach, of men standing shoulder to shoulder in fields of mud, of a promise made beneath stars and kept through blood. The bell fades, leaving only wind. You lean on your staff, listening. The world feels lighter. It begins with a sermon. Not a shout, not a war cry, only a voice, steady and sharp, echoing through the stone nave of the Grossmünster in Zurich. You stand among hundreds, shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with candle smoke and damp wool. The preacher is Ulrich Zwingli, once a priest like any other, now a man whose words crack the world open. It is 1519, and his voice carries across the pews like the toll of a clear bell. The gospel needs no chains of Rome. People murmur. A woman gasps. Someone crosses themselves. You do not move. You feel the tremor of change. For centuries, faith has been the anchor of these valleys. Monks have farmed their slopes. Priests have blessed the harvests. Bishops have ruled from marble halls. But now questions bloom like weeds between the stones. Why should a man pay for forgiveness? Why should bread be gold when mouths are empty? Zwingli speaks without fear, stripping the mystery from ritual. He preaches in German, not Latin. He demands that the church return to simplicity, to the bare word. And as his voice fills the church, you feel as if the walls themselves lean closer to listen. Afterward, the square outside is loud with argument. Some call him saint, others heretic. You walk home through the narrow streets, past the shops of tailors and goldsmiths. From the river, fog creeps upward, softening the sound of bells. Zurich smells of ink and melted wax, of bread and dissent. At first, the movement grows like dawn, slow, golden, unstoppable. By 1523, the city council sides with Zwingli. The mass is abolished, monasteries closed, statues are taken down, their faces packed away in crates. In the silence left behind, hymns in plain melody rise. You watch as painters whitewash frescoes, as altars are dismantled plank by plank. It feels both cleansing and cruel. When the organ falls silent, you feel its absence like the end of breath. Some nights you dream of the old sound, The layered Latin, the incense, the flicker of coloured light on marble, and you wake with guilt. Faith, you realize, has become a matter of memory. In Bern and Basel, the reformers gain ground. In Lucerne and Zug, priests resist, their processions growing more defiant with each passing week. The Confederation that once stood against emperors now fractures over scripture. In taverns, the arguments are louder than the drinking. One man quotes Luther, another recites the Pope's decree. Fists slam tables. Families stop speaking. The word Christian begins to require a surname: Catholic, Reformed, Anabaptist. You are caught between them. Your brother in Uri remains loyal to Rome. Your cousin in Bern calls you a coward for refusing to choose. But you have seen too much war to mistake faith for certainty. You tell them both. The mountains were not made by priests. Still, you cannot escape history. In 1529, Zurich's forces march toward the Catholic cantons. You are conscripted, again a soldier, though older, slower, tired of causes. You carry a halberd, its blade polished by generations. The army moves along the lake, banners snapping in the wind, but the enemy never comes. Negotiations succeed at the last moment. Both sides agree to peace. The men return home relieved, half believing the worst is over. 2 years later, it is not. 1531, autumn, you are in the field near Kappel, the air smelling of hay and iron. The Catholic alliance advances under the cross of St. Michael. Zurich's troops assemble on the hill. Zwingli himself rides with them, not in armour but in robe and cloak, a Bible in hand. He walks among the soldiers, speaking softly, blessing, unarmed. The first volley of arrows cuts him down. You see him fall, a flash of grey wool against green grass. His book drops open beside him. For a moment the field is silent. Then chaos breaks. The Catholics charge, their pikes lowered. You fight until the sky darkens with smoke and crows. When the battle ends, hundreds lie dead. Zwingli's body is found, stripped, burned, his ashes scattered to the wind. You kneel in the mud, not praying, only breathing. Somewhere, a cowbell rings in the distance, indifferent. The Second War of Kappel ends in defeat for Zurich. The treaty that follows is bitter but enduring. Each canton may choose its own faith. It sounds like peace, but it feels like fracture. You return home to find your street changed. The church door stands open to plain benches and white walls. The old crucifix is gone. Yet across the river the monastery bell still tolls, calling Catholics to Mass. The two sounds overlap each morning, one deep, one bright, and the city learns to live with discord as harmony. Years pass. The edges soften. Trade resumes. People marry across confessions, cautiously at first, then freely. Faith becomes quieter, more private, but the scar remains. In the hills, villagers choose sides and never speak again. In Appenzell, even cows are branded with symbols, crosses or psalms to mark which farmer owns them. Meanwhile, a new voice rises far to the west. Jean Calvin in Geneva, where Zwingli sought purity through reason, Calvin demands discipline through fear and faith. You travel there once, drawn by rumour. The city feels different, ordered, relentless. No paintings, no laughter after dusk. Yet within that severity you sense something profound, the will to make every moment sacred through work. You leave Geneva uneasy but changed. You realize that faith in this new world is not only a belief, it's a rhythm, like labor or breath. You return to Zurich and open a small workshop, crafting clocks. It feels almost ironic, building machines to measure time when eternity has split in two. Years pass. Your hands grow deft. Your hearing fades. The tick of gears replaces the chant of monks. Each clock you finish feels like reconciliation, precision as prayer. Around you, Switzerland begins to shift again. The Reformation reshapes more than religion. Schools open, literacy spreads, people read the Bible in their own tongues. Then turn to other books, medicine, science, philosophy. Knowledge seeps into the valleys like spring thaw. But the price remains heavy. Wars rage beyond your borders. France, Germany, Italy, each claiming God for its own. Mercenaries march out of the Alps by the thousands, their halberds gleaming beneath foreign suns. Many never return. They carry with them the reputation of the Swiss pikeman, fearless, disciplined, deadly. Gold fills the cities, graves fill the mountains. You retire before your son goes to France. He kisses your hand, promises to come back. You never see him again. His wages arrive one spring, coins in a pouch marked with the fleur-de-lis. You keep it on the mantel beside your clock. When it ticks, you imagine it marking not hours but heartbeats lost to history. In 1648, word reaches even your quiet workshop. The Treaty of Westphalia has ended the 30 Years' War. The negotiators in Münster have finally recognized Switzerland's independence from the Holy Roman Empire. The news spreads slowly, carried by merchants and monks. That night, you step outside. The air smells of rain and iron. Across the valley you hear church bells, Catholic and Protestant alike, ringing together for the first time in memory. Not in unison, but close enough. The sound trembles through you. You think of the oath on the meadow, the battles, the arguments, the fire in Zwingli's words, the silence in his death. Freedom, you realize, was never just about borders. It was about breathing your own prayers. The bells fade, leaving only the rhythmic tick of your clocks inside. You close the shutters, the sound softening to a heartbeat. In sleep, you dream of valleys filled with water and fire, of bells that refuse to stop ringing, of mountains that remember every voice. When you wake, dawn glows on the peaks and the clocks strike 6. Another day, in a land still learning how to stay whole. You are old enough now to understand the luxury of quiet. The world beyond your mountains roars, but here, the air moves like a long breath. You sit by a window overlooking the Aar River, the current sliding past pale houses and narrow bridges. It is the 18th century, and Switzerland, small and irregular on the map, has become a nation defined not by conquest, but by refusal. Europe is in turmoil again. Kings argue about crowns, philosophers argue about God, revolutions rise and fall like storms. But here the snow falls the same way it always has, soft, inevitable, without politics. You live in Bern, now a city of wide arcades and measured calm. The guilds rule, merchants trade, clocks strike with mechanical precision. The Confederation, 13 cantons strong, has found a rhythm, rigid, conservative, but peaceful. Neutrality has become habit, like breathing through the nose. Still, not everything is calm beneath the surface. Power pools in the hands of a few old families. The patricians wear their velvet coats in winter while the farmers sell their oats for copper. You run a small printing shop near the Nidegg Bridge, setting type by candlelight. Each evening the smell of ink stains your fingers, and the creak of the press sounds like the heartbeat of thought. Lately your orders have changed. The customers ask for pamphlets, not psalters. Their titles are curious things. The Rights of Man, The Spirit of Laws, On Liberty and the Social Contract. You print them quietly, glancing toward the window each time the bell over your door rings. The authorities claim to tolerate enlightenment, but tolerance has limits. When the sheets come out warm from the press, you hold them up to the light. The letters gleam wet and black. They feel alive. Outside, the night glows faintly blue from lanterns reflected on the river. Across the street, your neighbour sells chocolate, a new delicacy imported from colonies you will never see. The scent of cocoa drifts through the air, mixing with the tang of metal from your press. The city hums with contradictions. Luxury beside hunger, learning beside fear. In taverns, people debate in whispers. Some praise Voltaire, now living in exile just beyond Geneva, in a villa surrounded by books and scandal. Others quote Rousseau, born in Geneva but driven out for writing too honestly about the nature of man. You have never met either, but you've printed their words. You know how dangerous ink can be. Sometimes, when you set the last line of type and step outside to stretch, you hear the distant crack of thunder over the Alps. Not weather history. The French Revolution is building like a storm cloud to the west. Then it breaks. 1789. The streets of Paris fill with voices and blood. Monarchs tremble. Armies gather. The ideas you once printed in secret now march behind banners. In 1798, the storm reaches you. French troops cross the border, their blue coats splashed with mud, their tricolour flags snapping in the wind. They claim they have come not to conquer but to liberate. The old Confederation collapses like a paper wall. You watch from your doorway as soldiers in polished boots trample the cobblestones. They bring new words: citizen, equality, republic, and new demands: grain, taxes, obedience, the Helvetic Republic. They call it a unified state built in France's image. For the first time, the cantons lose their independence. You stand in the square as they lower the old banners and raise a new one, green, red, yellow. The crowd claps uncertainly. You do not. Freedom, you think, is not always loud. At first, there is hope. The new constitution promises rights, schools, reform, but soon confusion spreads. The people of the mountains do not want a central government in Bern. The farmers of the plains do not want orders from Paris. Riots flare, armies return. The republic lasts only a few years before dissolving into fatigue. By 1803, another name fills the air: Napoleon Bonaparte. He summons Swiss envoys to Paris, studies their weary faces, and signs the Act of Mediation. Federalism returns, half freedom, half control. 19 cantons now, each with its own laws, its own pride. It is compromise disguised as salvation. You are no longer young, but you watch with a printer's fascination as the presses run again, this time printing decrees instead of pamphlets. You set type for new coins. Helvetia. You wonder if the word will last. Napoleon calls Switzerland the watchtower of Europe. He is right. The mountains stand like sentinels, observing the chaos below. When his empire collapses, your valleys wait, patient. In 1815, at the Congress of Vienna, the great powers redraw the map of Europe once more. Amid all the negotiations and betrayals, one small clause passes quietly but forever. The perpetual neutrality of Switzerland shall be recognized and guaranteed. The line is signed in ink that takes seconds to dry but will last centuries. You retire the following year. Your printing press, worn and dented, still smells of lead and ambition. You close your shop, walk along the river, and see your reflection in the water, ink-stained, wrinkled, peaceful. The country feels different now. The old aristocrats return but weaker. The farmers gain voices in councils. The monks reopen libraries. Roads are being built through mountain passes. The first stagecoaches rumble through valleys that once knew only mule hooves. You see the world shrinking, folding inward toward the heart of Europe. Still, neutrality is not quiet. The revolutions of 1830 shake even the Alps. You are too old to join, but you hear the bells of protest from your window. Young men march for constitutions, for equality among cantons, for something new, a federal identity. And when the fighting ends in 1847, after the brief civil war known as the Sonderbund, you sense the air change again. The next year brings a new constitution, one that binds the cantons not as neighbours but as a single nation. 1848, the birth of the modern Swiss Federation. You do not live to see it, but your grandson does. He writes to you once, before your hands fail. His letter smells of train smoke and oil. He works on the new Gotthard Pass, tunneling through the heart of the mountain you once printed poems about. The rock is stubborn, he writes, but we are more so. You die in your chair beside the window, the river murmuring outside, the last copy of the Rights of Man on your lap. You have seen tyranny and revolution, faith and reform, and in the end, only one truth remains: the land endures, and the people endure with it. Outside, the sky clears. The bells ring, again, always. They sound the same as they did when you were a child, though the world beneath them has turned upside down. The echo travels through time like light through glass, bouncing from century to century, softening but never breaking. Soon, trains will cross these mountains, and wires will hum with invisible voices. The farmers will read newspapers by gaslight, and the children will learn that neutrality is not passivity but strength disguised as calm. For now, the valleys rest. Snow settles on rooftops. The river keeps flowing east, toward the Rhine, toward the sea you have never seen. Beyond the borders, armies gather again, monarchs fall, ideologies rise, but the mountains remain indifferent, their silence heavy and pure. Inside that silence, something fragile and enormous survives, a country learning how to exist by standing still. If you enjoy these journeys, a like and a subscription mean more than you think. They directly keep this channel alive. The 19th century breathes in smoke and steel. Dawn breaks not with roosters or bells, but with the hiss of pistons. You are born in Lucerne, in a century that measures itself by movement. The mountains still stand as they always have, but now they tremble slightly as trains crawl through their hearts. Your father worked the old postal road. You, the new railway. Every morning you lace your boots and walk toward the sound of hammering iron on iron, the music of modernity. The Gotthard Tunnel is under construction, the most ambitious project your country has ever dared to imagine. 15 kilometers through granite, linking north and south, German and Italian, lake and plain. It is the year 1880, and Switzerland, once the land of stillness, is learning to hum. You descend with the others into the mountain's throat, carrying a lamp and a prayer. The air is hot, heavy with powder smoke. The tunnel smells of sweat, oil, and dynamite. You are one of thousands, Italians, Austrians, Swiss, paid by the day, measured by the meter. Each blast shakes the ribs of the earth. Each echo sounds like history opening. Sometimes you pause between detonations and listen. The silence inside the mountain is alive, like the pause between heartbeats. You think of the ancestors who crossed these peaks barefoot, of the men who swore oaths under the stars. You wonder if they would understand the need to carve through the mountain rather than climb it. You cough black dust, but you keep digging. On the surface, the world changes faster than the seasons. Telegraph wires stretch along the rails. Carriages vanish, letters arrive in hours instead of weeks. The new constitution has unified the country. The federal government in Bern builds roads, regulates trade, standardizes weights and measures. Even the old currencies have melted into one. The Swiss franc, minted with the profile of Helvetia, the eternal woman with braided hair and calm eyes. It is not empire or conquest that drives this century. It is precision. In Geneva, craftsmen make watches that can outlast generations. In La Chaux-de-Fonds, gears click beneath magnifying glasses, tick by tick, refining the concept of time. The Swiss clock, foreigners call it, meaning perfection, reliability, control. Yet to you, time feels less obedient. Inside the tunnel, hours stretch and collapse like breath. Sometimes a collapse is literal. One spring morning, a thunderous crack splits the darkness. Dust fills your lungs. Lamps swing wildly. A section of roof gives way. Burying 10 men, you dig with bleeding hands, screaming their names. By nightfall, only 3 bodies are found. Their watches stop at the same minute. The engineer marks it in his logbook without emotion. 10:47 a.m., May 28th. You keep working, because what else can you do? Years later, when the Gotthard Tunnel opens in 1882, the first train glides through with banners and brass bands. You stand among the crowd, hat in hand, and watch it emerge into sunlight. It feels like watching the mountain exhale after centuries of holding its breath. You think of all the lives left inside that darkness. You think of the clock hands that stopped and never moved again. Then the whistle sounds bright and clear, and the world moves forward. Progress becomes religion. Electricity races through cables. Cities bloom with gaslight. You move to Zurich, where factories hum day and night, their chimneys turning clouds grey. The air smells of coal and rain. You work in a machine shop assembling gears for new locomotives. The rhythm steady and strangely comforting. Each shift begins with the same whistle, ends with the same bell. Your wife works in a textile mill. Your daughter attends the new public school, learning French, arithmetic, and the story of the Confederation. She recites the names of the cantons as if they were blessings. You listen and smile. For the first time in memory, every Swiss child learns the same story, the same anthem, the same map, the same promise of unity. The Federal Parliament building rises in Bern, a dome of green copper gleaming against the sky. Inside, representatives from every canton debate in 3 languages, sometimes shouting, sometimes laughing. You read about it in the papers and imagine their voices overlapping like a choir. It sounds chaotic, but it is harmony of a kind. Not all voices are content. The new century brings its own storms. Strikes in Zurich, riots in Basel, arguments about the price of bread and the hours of work. But these conflicts end not with armies, only with votes. The referendum system, direct democracy, has taken root. Each man with calloused hands can mark a piece of paper and shape a law. It feels almost miraculous, a quiet revolution. When you walk home at dusk, the streets shine with gas lamps. The Limit River glows faintly silver. From the tower of the church, the clock strikes 9. Each bell toll feels deliberate, carved from air. In the cafes, talk turns to inventions, bicycles, telegraphs, machines that capture photographs, rumors of a patent clerk in Bern studying the nature of time itself. Einstein, someone says, a name not yet famous. You smile at the coincidence. Time has always belonged to Switzerland. In 1891, the government adopts a new national symbol, the white cross on red, once a battlefield emblem, now a flag of peace. Children wave it at festivals. The smell of roasted nuts and brass music fills the air. You remember your father's stories of Sempark, of Winkelried, of the bell that called men to arms. Now the same bell calls them to celebration. And then quiet. As the century turns, you grow slower, softer. You retire from the factory and open a small repair shop near the station. Travellers bring you their watches, their clocks, their broken metronomes. You fix them all. When you finish, you always listen for the first tick, the sound of time resuming. It reminds you of breathing. Outside your window, the trains never stop. They come from Milan, Basel, Paris, Vienna. They carry soldiers, traders, lovers, ideas. They bring the world closer but not louder. You realize the secret of your country. The noise outside never drowns the silence within. You keep your ledger in 3 languages. You charge the same price to all. When foreigners ask what keeps Switzerland peaceful amid empires, you shrug, perhaps mountains, perhaps clocks. Both measure patience. Your grandson visits from the city one day, full of talk about politics. They say we must be ready, he warns. Europe is turning dark again. Alliances, armies, hatred, it's all returning. You look at him, at the urgency in his voice, and think of the tunnel, the sound of stone breaking. Progress and fear, you realize, are twins. Still, you trust the quiet. You trust the rhythm of ticking gears, of falling snow, of bells marking hours no one can steal. One evening you climb the hill above the station. The air smells of coal and pine. Below, the rails gleam like veins of silver. A train slides out of the tunnel, its windows bright as constellations. Behind it, the mountain swallows the sound and gives back silence. You stand there until the stars come out. Steady, precise, ancient. They look, you think, like a watch face scattered across the sky. A century ago, your ancestors swore oaths by those same stars. You smile, understanding now what they could not have guessed, that freedom is not a single act of defiance, but the patience to measure life in steady seconds, to build, repair, and endure. The church bell below strikes 10. The trains fade into distance, and the clocks keep time, not for war, not for empire, but for peace. The 20th century begins not with fireworks, but with the hum of power. Electric lines hum, where rivers once flowed untouched. Lamps flicker on along the Bahnhofstrasse in Zurich, illuminating faces that have learned to look forward. Switzerland feels confident, prosperous, awake. Banks rise like new cathedrals, all marble and discretion. Watchmakers whisper of patents. Engineers map rivers for hydroelectric dams. The air smells of oil, ink, and milk boiled for chocolate. You are born in Geneva, 1904, the son of a clockmaker and a teacher. The house smells of varnish, candle grease, and coffee. The city feels like a conversation held in 4 languages at once. Each street has a rhythm: German precision, French elegance, Italian warmth, Roman shyness. You grow up hearing them all, and never quite belonging to any single one. Your father tells you stories at night. He speaks of the oath beneath the stars of Winkelried and Morgarten, of monks who copied light onto parchment. We are not warriors anymore, he says. We are guardians, guardians of stillness. You think it a strange thing to guard, but his voice is steady, and the ticking of the clocks around your bed makes it sound true. When war finally comes, it comes everywhere but here. 1914. The world collapses into fire. You are 10 years old when the newspapers fill with words like mobilization and massacre. Switzerland mobilizes too, not to invade, but to watch. 250,000 soldiers climb into the Alps to guard borders that no one dares cross. You see them march through Geneva, grey coats, rifles slung, faces drawn tight. The crowd cheers, but softly, as if afraid to wake something sleeping. From your window you watch trains carrying refugees. French mothers, German children, Italian labourers. They speak different languages but share the same silence of hunger. Your mother volunteers at a shelter, ladling soup until her hands blister. At night she says, "We are neutral, yes, but neutrality is work." The Red Cross, born here half a century earlier, fills the city with white flags and quiet purpose. In the corridors of its new building near the lake, letters arrive from every front, pleas for news of sons, husbands, brothers. You help deliver them on your bicycle. You knock, wait, hand over an envelope, and see a face shift from hope to sorrow in a heartbeat. Sometimes people thank you, sometimes they close the door. By the time the guns fall silent in 1918, Switzerland has become the world's conscience, a small nation that stayed awake while the rest of Europe burned. Yet even conscience grows weary. Factories slow, strikes erupt, soldiers mutiny over wages. In Zurich, workers take to the streets demanding bread. The government calls in troops. Shots are fired. The newspapers call it a general strike. You are 14, crouched under a bridge, as bullets crack over the river. Neutrality, you learn, does not mean peace. The years that follow are brittle but bright. 1920. The newly formed League of Nations chooses Geneva as its home. You find work there as a clerk, translating minutes between French and English. The building smells of paper and ideals. You watch diplomats arrive by train. Japanese in stiff collars, Argentinians in wide hats, Germans avoiding eyes. They argue politely about disarmament, reparations, borders. You write down every word, believing history can be organized like a ledger. But history does not obey minutes. 1939. You are 35 when the radios crackle with the news. Germany invades Poland. Once again, Europe darkens. Switzerland mobilizes overnight. The General Guisan calls every able man to arms. You trade your pen for a uniform, your desk for a trench in the Redoué, the hidden network of mountain fortresses built to turn the Alps into one giant bunker. You live inside stone. Days smell of oil and damp concrete. Nights stretch endless. You listen to engines overhead, never knowing if they are friendly. You eat canned meat, drink melted snow, write letters you never send. When fear comes, you remember your father's phrase, guardians of stillness, and try to believe it. Above you, Europe burns again. Refugees arrive by the thousands. Jews fleeing the Reich, deserters from France, women with infants wrapped in blankets. Some are turned away, and you feel the shame in every rumour. Others are taken in, hidden in barns, hospitals, monasteries. Neutrality becomes a tightrope stretched over fire. You are 50 when the war ends. The bells ring for hours. The city celebrates with restraint. Victory elsewhere means survival here. The world gathers again in Geneva, this time under a new flag, the United Nations. You translate speeches about peace, knowing how fragile the word is. The next decades feel different. Quiet, yes, but charged. Prosperity fills the valleys. Highways uncoil through mountains, tunnels blink with light. Banks swell, watches glitter. Tourists arrive from everywhere. Americans seeking purity, Germans seeking silence, Italians seeking snow. Switzerland becomes a mirror where the world sees its better self. You leave the League building and start working for a small newspaper. You write editorials about neutrality, about conscience, about the price of safety. You question whether a country that guards gold for every nation can ever be innocent. Your editor frowns but prints your words. You receive polite letters of disagreement written in exquisite penmanship. Only in Switzerland could dissent sound so courteous. 1960s. Your daughter studies medicine. Your son becomes an engineer, designing hydroelectric turbines in Ticino. He sends postcards from dam sites, the handwriting smudged by rain. He writes, "We turn mountains into light." You visit once, stand at the foot of the wall of concrete, hear the hum of the turbines, and feel awe and fear in equal measure. The water roars like time itself, captured and obedient. As you age, the world shrinks. Airplanes cross the Alps daily. Satellites map every ridge. The Swiss franc becomes a symbol of stability so strong that foreign nations anchor their hopes to it. You still live near the lake, still walk the same cobblestones. The streets smell of roasted coffee and diesel now. The shop windows glitter with watches precise to 1,000th of a second. Time has become an export. In 1984, you turn 80. You stand on your balcony watching a thunderstorm roll across the water. Lightning flashes over the jet d'eau, the great fountain that throws a column of water straight into the sky as if the lake were exhaling. You think of the glacier hunter from 15,000 years ago, of the oath on the meadow, of the tunnelers who cut through the mountain. Each was a kind of defiance to live where the world says you cannot. Your grandchildren visit, their voices quick, their French salted with English words. They tell you about computers, about something called the internet that will soon connect every house in the world. You laugh softly. The mountains will still stand, you say, but perhaps now they will have Wi-Fi. They don't understand the joke, but they smile anyway. At night, you turn on the radio. The announcer reads market numbers, exchange rates, the temperature at Zurich airport. The voice is calm, unhurried, neutral, the sound of a nation that has learned to measure even chaos. Outside, the rain softens. The lights of the city blur on the water. You fall asleep in your chair, the same way your father once did, the clocks ticking around you in patient harmony. In your dream, centuries collapse. You see monks writing, soldiers marching, farmers swearing oaths, tunnelers sweating in rock, children waving small red flags. You see them all as one long breath, one heartbeat of endurance. When you wake, dawn filters through the curtains. The air smells of coffee and ozone. You step to the balcony. The mountains are pale blue against the sky. their tips lit with gold. From somewhere far away, a train horn drifts up through the mist, long and low. You realize you have lived through a century of storms without ever hearing a cannon in your own valley. You realize that the greatest Swiss invention is not the watch or the bank, but the art of remaining calm while the world shatters and rebuilds itself again and again. You breathe in, steady. Even the sound of the train fades. The city wakes. The bells begin to ring, clear, deliberate, familiar. They have always rung for work, for warning, for worship. Now they ring simply because they can, because the air is free and time is still yours. You sit back down, hands folded in your lap, and let the sound wash through you. Each chime carries every story that came before: ice and oath, battle and bell, faith and fracture, steel and silence. And as the last note lingers, you understand what your father meant. To be Swiss is not to stand apart, it is to hold steady, to measure time not in seconds but in endurance, to listen until even the wind sounds like a heartbeat. The bell rings once more. The city glows, the mountains breathe, and the Republic, quiet and alive, keeps time with the world.